Good morning. I don't usually post videos, but this morning I was led to a scripture in the Bible that really helped me, and I just thought maybe someone else needs to hear it. So I thought I would read it for you. I am in a season of waiting on God to answer my prayers for the right job for me. And it feels like He's taking a really long time to answer. And I have found myself getting discouraged and frustrated because I don't understand what's taking Him so long. And this morning, I even found myself while I was driving, I was talking to God and saying, okay, after I drop the kids off, then I'll read my Bible and I'll pray. And I thought to myself, I don't feel like praying because I'm mad at you. And then it kind of made me like chuckle and think, I'm easily mad at the Lord for not giving me what I want when I want it, when it seems like I'm asking for something good and important. So I read the passage about Lazarus dying and being raised from the dead, and it reminded me how we don't understand why God does what He does or why He does things in the timing that He does. But in this case, Jesus said that He wanted them to see more of His glory. That's why He allowed Lazarus to die first before raising him, as opposed to just healing him and keeping him from dying. And He wanted to reveal to His followers and His beloved friends, Mary and Martha, a new part of His character, and He wanted to give them a new revelation. They knew He could heal the sick, and they said, if you had been here, He wouldn't have died, Lord. They didn't know He could raise people from the dead. So He wanted to show them that. So I'm going to read this for you. It is John 11, 1 through 44. Now a man named Lazarus was sick. He was from Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. This Mary, whose brother Lazarus now lay sick, was the same one who poured perfume on the Lord and wiped His feet with her hair. So the sisters sent word to Jesus, Lord, the one you love is sick. When He heard this, Jesus said, this sickness will not end in death. No, it is for God's glory, so that God's Son may be glorified through it. Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. Yet when He heard that Lazarus was sick, He stayed where he was 2 more days. Then He said to His disciples, let us go back to Judea. But Rabbi, they said, a short while ago the Jews tried to stone you, and yet you are going back there? Jesus answered, are there not 12 hours of daylight? A man who walks by day will not stumble, for he sees by this world's light. It is when he walks by night that he stumbles, for he has no light. After He had said this, He went on to tell them, our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I am going there to wake him up. His disciples replied, Lord, if he sleeps, he will get better. Jesus had been speaking of his death, but His disciples thought He meant natural sleep. So then He told them plainly, Lazarus is dead, and for your sake I am glad I was not there, so that you may believe. But let us go to him. Then Thomas, called Didymus, said to the rest of the disciples, let us also go, that we may die with him. On his arrival, Jesus found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. Bethany was less than 2 miles from Jerusalem, and many Jews had come to Martha and Mary to comfort them in the loss of their brother. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went out to meet Him, but Mary stayed at home. Lord, Martha said to Jesus, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But I know that even now God will give you whatever you ask. Jesus said to her, your brother will rise again. Martha answered, I know he will rise again in the resurrection at the last day. Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me will live even though he dies, and whoever lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this? Yes, Lord, she told him. I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, who was to come into the world. And after she had said this, she went back and called her sister Mary aside. The teacher is here, she said, and is asking for you. When Mary heard this, she got up quickly and went to Him. Now Jesus had not yet entered the village, but was still at the place where Martha had met Him. When the Jews who had been with Mary in the house, comforting her, noticed how quickly she got up and went out, they followed her, supposing she was going to the tomb to mourn there. When Mary reached the place where Jesus was, and saw Him, she fell at His feet and said, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come along with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. "Where have you laid him?" he asked. "Come and see, Lord," they replied. Jesus wept. Then the Jews said, "See how he loved him." But some of them said, "Could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man have kept this man from dying?" Jesus, once more deeply moved, came to the tomb. It was a cave with a stone laid across the entrance. "Take away the stone," he said. "But Lord," said Martha, the sister of the dead man, "by this time there's a bad odor, for he has been there 4 days." Then Jesus said, "Did I not tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God?" So they took away the stone. Then Jesus looked up and said, "Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I said this for the benefit of the people standing here, that they may believe that you sent me." When he had said this, Jesus called in a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out!" The dead man came out, his hands and feet wrapped with strips of linen and a cloth around his face. Jesus said to them, "Take off the grave clothes and let him go." And I hope and pray that this encourages you, if you've been listening, the way that it encouraged me. God has perfect timing, and we don't always understand why he waits so long.